Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Running Tales podcast. My name's Craig, and today I'll be speaking to the runner and author Lisa Jackson. Lisa's latest book is the brilliant Still Running After All These Tears, a simultaneously heartbreaking and inspiring account of the loss of her husband Graham and the part that running played in helping her to reclaim her life. Now, it is fair to say that Lisa really loves running. Her completion of more than 100 marathons is testament to that. But when her grief over Graham was followed by losing her sister and father as well, all within 17 months, that relationship was tested to its very limits. Still Running After All These Tears is marketed as a survival manual for the broken-hearted and a celebration of the redemptive power of running. If it's anything like the book, this will be a conversation that will make you both laugh and cry. Now, just before we dive into Lisa's story, I want to go over a little bit of housekeeping very quickly. I know this is the worst bit of the whole podcast, but as ever, I'd encourage you to take a moment to like and subscribe the pod wherever you listen. If you're on Spotify or YouTube, we would love to hear and see your comments too. You can also find us on our website, runningtales.co.uk, or on Substack at runningtales.substack.com, where the extraordinary stories of everyday runners that we aim to tell appear in written form. Now, among our recent articles are an in-depth look into the running story of Hoka's newest global ambassador, Bex Gentry, and the story of how wheelchair racer Ben Parker was told he couldn't enter the Chelmsford Half Marathon. So go and check those out. There's lots and lots on there, but of course, there's also lots for us to talk about now. So without further ado, let's welcome Lisa Jackson to the Running Tales podcast. Hey, Lisa, how you doing?
Hi, Craig. So lovely to be here. Thanks for having me on.
No, you're more than welcome. As I said there, we're going to talk about your book today. It's a book that's just got plenty of sadness in it, unfortunately, but I suppose, some laughs as well. But before we go into it, I just wanted to talk a little bit about Graham because he's obviously central to all of this, and I suppose life your life with Graham a little bit before his diagnosis and everything you did together because it's a pretty wonderful story from what the book says, and also it involved a little bit of running, even though he wasn't always as keen as you.
It is a very fair comment. I think Graham would have called himself a running hater more than a running enthusiast. But I think anyone who is in my ambit finally gets converted to running. I think all my friends and my colleagues will attest to this. I'm so enthusiastic about it, even though I find it extraordinarily difficult. And I sometimes call myself a running hater as well. But I just know it's one of the most joyful, life-affirming things you can ever do. And I think people see me probably after a run, just can't believe I've actually done it. I am very self-congratulatory, and very proud of myself, and I just glow with happiness. And then they go, "Oh, I'll have a little bit of that too." And they probably don't see me, shuffling along outside like, a kind of punch drunk boxer or something, cursing and swearing and questioning all my life choices while I'm doing it. So yeah, Graham did not like running, but he was actually very good at it. And, it
Yeah.
always surprised me, his marathon times. I mean, he did manage to get sub 4 in the Rotterdam Marathon. And, he trained so little for any of the marathons he did. And there were many people in my running club who turned up 5 times a week who couldn't come near to the times that he did. But he just said, "I hate running. It's horrible. And the faster I get to the finish, the quicker it'll be over." So that was his approach to running. And for me, it was the opposite. Like the longer I take to finish a marathon, the more I'm getting value for money and the more chance I have to chat to people and meet people. So he was quite silent in marathons, although there were a few, like in Rome, he really coached a woman to a PB. I was very surprised to hear this, but he took her under his wing. And weirdly,
Yeah.
I ran with her daughter.
Oh
And
wow.
we didn't know them beforehand. And afterwards, when we compared notes, I said, "Oh, I ran with this lovely young woman who was, so upset because their luggage went missing on their flight over from England." And he said, "I ran with a woman whose daughter was also running, whose luggage also went missing." And we worked out we'd run, with 2 generations of the same family. So, yeah, Graham didn't like running, but he actually, in the end, ran 2 ultramarathons as well. He ran Comrades twice, and he ran the up run and the down run, whereas I've only actually run the down run because I fell over on the up run and I never finished it. So he actually had, in some ways, a better running credential or better running credentials than I did. Um, But yeah, we met at university. He was my tutor, and he was a feminist because he was British, and I was at a South African university. And I didn't meet many men who treated women as equals, and Graham really did, despite being my tutor. And it was love at first sight. It really was. I just thought he was absolutely extraordinary. And he was just so intelligent, so well traveled, but he had all the same values that I had as well. Like money wasn't, his motivator. He really loved education, so he actually ended up getting a PhD in philosophy. And we did become, very keen travelers later in life, but that wasn't the original passion that we shared. It was
Mm.
mainly just having the same passion for knowledge and curiosity about the world that we shared, and also a sense of humor. Graham was extremely
Yeah.
funny. And you'll see in the book, I mean, he just could make any situation hilarious. And that's why we were such good travel companions, because no matter what grim situation we were in, we just kill ourselves laughing about it. So I do notice that about myself now. I feel much more like my old self after all these bereavements. But the thing I don't do is laugh as much as I used to, because I was genuinely, I think probably every hour I'd laugh 3 times with Graham. So he was, very intelligent, very intellectual, but he never took himself too seriously. And, he was a real delight to be around.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a wonderful relationship that you were lucky enough to have from what comes through in the book. But obviously, that diagnosis did come along. It tested both your humor and your positivity to the maximum. And it actually, if I remember rightly, it all started out when Graham went for a run, didn't it? Do you want to sort of tell people how that happened? And I suppose, because I only touched on it a little bit in the intro, what actually sadly happened to Graham?
Yeah, I was teaching a hypnobirthing class, and Graham went for a run. And when he came back, he just said, Lisa, that was just terrible. I couldn't breathe. And I said, my love, you haven't been running for ages, and you probably just set out too fast, and how many times have I told you, just ease yourself back in gently. If you ran more often, you wouldn't find it so challenging. And he said, no, you don't understand. I couldn't run to the end of the block. And my heart just, contracted. And I said, God, that's not right. And thank goodness Graham was a very sensible person, and he went straight to the doctor the very next day. He had a chest x-ray. I saw some shadows on his lungs, and then it ended up having a procedure where they removed fluid from his lung, about a liter of fluid, and there was still another 2 or 3 liters left there. They were quite surprised that he could, breathe. I mean, I couldn't believe it
Mm.
when I was told how much fluid there was. And then subsequently, he was told that he had mesothelioma, which is asbestos-related lung cancer, which came as a massive blow. And that cancer is always described as aggressive, terminal, devastating. They don't mince their words when they talk about it. And Graham was told that he only had between 18 months and 5 years to live. So that was an enormous shock to us. I mean, we were just so happily married, and we just imagined this retirement where we would travel the world
Mm.
backpacking, because we'd noticed when we were younger, white-haired backpackers getting on buses, and we just thought, oh, can you imagine how amazing those people are? We want to be those people. And to suddenly
Yeah.
have our future ripped away from us like that was enormously shocking. And so we were absolutely devastated. Like it just. We experienced unbearable pain at that point. I've never been more upset, more terrified in my life, especially since I'd known Graham since I was 18. So to imagine a future without him was inconceivable. I'd never lived my adult life without him by my side. But eventually we realized that we couldn't live like that. We couldn't live in fear, and we took a decision to live in hope. Because I said to Graham, if we're going to just sit here, just continually rehearsing how you're going to die, and whether you're going to die in pain, and will you be on oxygen, and will you suffocate to death, and how will the tumors present themselves, and all that, it's ruining our present moment. And right at the moment, once he'd had all the fluid removed, and you know, he was actually back to normal. So I just said, we
Mm.
have to live in hope. And thank goodness Graham, really fully embraced that concept. And I said, you might as well die right now, if any time you have left is just going to be consumed by fear and, horrible imaginings. And so we set up a positivity book. And in that, we wrote down every single positive thing Graham had been told about his illness. So weirdly, there are worse and better forms of mesothelioma, and he had the best one. Graham was
Mm.
one of, I think, five of his surgeon's patients who didn't require a blood transfusion during surgery. Graham's immune system was incredibly healthy. He was fit, we kept calling him, he's an ultra runner. Um,
Yeah.
and he obviously, had research skills because he was a research analyst for the Foreign Office, and I had research skills as a journalist and author. So we researched his illness very thoroughly. I did most of that because I didn't want Graham to read the terrible prognoses, and some of the things were very upsetting to read. I mean, the latest, most groundbreaking research extended people's lives by a week or a month. It just,
Yeah.
and that was, therapies that cost hundreds of thousands of pounds. And it was just like, oh my God, this is really serious. So I wanted to shield Graham from that. And he was working full time, which he did until a month before his death. Whereas I'm freelance and I work as a hypnotherapist and writer. So my time's a lot more flexible. So I took that burden off him. I did the research and I realized, I found out that what kind of surgery he had to have, because there's a lot of controversy over that, but I discovered which was the right one to have, which was just removing the lining of his lung rather than his whole lung. And I also happened to stumble across probably one of the best surgeons in the world in this field, who was London based. We were very lucky. So Graham and I embarked on this journey together. We wrote each other positive messages in the positivity book. We had mantras that he would say in the shower every day. We sought out positive people. We sought to lead our lives with as much joy as we possibly could. We did a lot of traveling together. Once he'd had the surgery and he'd recovered from the chemo, we ran several half marathons together. That was, in fact, the way he celebrated the end of his chemo, was doing a half
Mm.
marathon in the Czech Republic, where I was booted off the course for being too slow. And he got a medal. And I'm telling you, I was surprised that he had managed to fit through the doorway. His head was so big. He was so proud of himself. And he said, not bad for an old man who's just finished chemo. And I was so proud of him. Honestly, I really, really was. So yeah, is how we approach things. And Graham really was so courageous. He would, embark on any treatment that could have prolonged his life, and he did live as long as he possibly could. But unfortunately, the cancer went to his brain, which it only does in 3% of cases of mesothelioma. So it was something that we put out of our minds. I never contemplated that he would have brain tumors. And then he started having coordination difficulties, and he couldn't even grasp a mug. And so we asked for that to be investigated, and all they said was, can you put your fingers together? At the hospital charged us £2,500 for the privilege of an overnight stay in that question. And because he could put his fingers together, they discharged him. And it was only later when we went to a hospice for a consultation about his pain that the woman said, that doesn't sound right to me, he needs a brain scan. And that's when we just
Mm.
received the devastating news that his brain was riddled with tumors. And we were actually shown an x-ray later on. And I was just absolutely shocked that Graham, still could speak and walk and drive. I mean, he was even driving with a head full of brain tumors. It was really shocking to me. And then we knew, that, the end was nigh, if you like. But we still stayed positive right until the end. And Graham was admitted to a hospice where the care was very substandard. And I'm a big campaigner for assisted dying, because Graham at times received very good palliative care and other times not, but within the hospice
Mm.
or when I took him out of the hospice. But there is a limit to how much the current pain relief drugs can eliminate pain, and they couldn't do that in Graham's case. So Graham begged to die. He said, you wouldn't treat an animal this way. I saw unbelievable suffering that scars me to this day. And obviously, the person who had to endure it the most, and the person it was worst for, was Graham. I mean, he had such a high pain threshold. So for him to say, this is unbearable, you need to know that this was like holding your hand in a flame. But for me to witness what he went through and not be able to offer him anything to help him, and the medical staff had nothing to help him with either, is something that I will stay with me till my dying day. And so, I've campaigned tirelessly for the assisted dying bill. In the middle of my book launch, I've been campaigning for it. I've hosted rallies single-handedly in West Worthing to thank our MP, our wonderful MP who voted in favor of assisted dying. And I will continue to fight for this until my dying day, because I think everybody needs a choice. Obviously, palliative care needs to be improved, but I was told a lie. I was told no one in the 21st century should die in pain. And then after Graham died, and when I complained, I wrote 11 letters of complaint, and I was told that you're actually wrong, you're misinformed. There are certain types of pain that cannot be medicated, and Graham's pain was one of them. So, yeah, Graham, inspires me to this day. And I ran my marathon, in his honor last year, and I will run this year's Brighton Marathon again in his honor, because I know he was so proud of me for being a runner. Like every time I came back from a run where he hadn't gone out with me, he'd say, "How was your run?" And he'd give me this big hug at the front door. And that's something that it's one of my fondest memories is I never let myself into our house if Graham was home. I always insisted on knocking on the door, and he had to come and open the door for me because I used to just like fall in love with him all over again. Every time I did that, my heart used to leap, in my chest. And I just love that feeling so much. And I said, I know it's a pain, but can you please open the door for me every time I come home? So he always, gave me that little moment of joy when I came back.
Yeah. Oh no, I absolutely love that. That's such a lovely story, and it seems to sum up the relationship that you had. I think. I mean, on the kind of assisted dying front, I think it really comes home that argument. I would personally agree with you. There might be other people who have different views. That's fine. We're a running podcast at the end of the day, but I think we want to talk about these sort of things as well. And for me, particularly when you see someone who was strong, an ultra marathoner, had such a joy for life, and then they're in that situation. I mean, that's no life. That's not their life anymore. And on top of that, he was in such pain, wasn't he? And it just seems very, very unfair.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not about shortening someone's life. It's about shortening their death and
Mm,
shortening their suffering. So I'm all for, all the safeguards that need to be put in place. But at the end of the day, it's only going to be available to people who are terminally ill and only have 6 months to live. And, if Graham had had to go to Dignitas, which we never discussed, I don't actually know why we didn't discuss it, but we became living in hope, and then it became a habit. And, we're not going to talk about his death, and we never did. I mean, after our initial discussions about it, we never went down that road again. But he would have had to go to Dignitas long before he really was ready to die, because he needed to be able to be healthy enough to go on a plane. And then he would have had to go to
mm,
Dignitas alone, because otherwise I would have been prosecuted. And obviously I wouldn't have allowed that. So then I would now be sitting in jail or be under investigation, right now for accompanying
mm.
him. So there's a lot of ramifications that people don't understand about going to Dignitas is not the easy solution one thinks, and also it costs £15,000. But thank you for saying that. I know that people, have many objections to this, but what I witnessed with my own eyes, I don't think if anyone had witnessed that, they wouldn't want that choice for themselves. And it's a choice. It's not going to be foisted on anyone, and you don't have to sign up for it. And you don't, even if you did agree to it, you don't have to go through with it. No one, is going to say once you signed a piece of paper that you have to do it. And I just don't want to
Mm.
spend the rest of my life fearing my own death, because what I saw, I saw my father die as well, and that was a peaceful death. It was a COVID death. My dad also had bone cancer, so because Graham's cancer pain came from his mesothelioma going to his bones. So I knew my dad was going to have an agonizing death as well, and I couldn't face it. I just said to his GP, please, please spare me this, because I just don't think I can take anymore. And she said, she was a palliative care doctor, and she said, Lisa, I'll make sure that doesn't happen to you again. And in the end, it wasn't what she did, it was actually COVID, took my father away and gave him a merciful, peaceful death.
Yeah, we had my wife and I, Michelle, we had a friend who had pancreatic cancer, and towards the end, it was just living with pain, and it was
Yeah,
it was it was horrible. It was like, why does he have to still be alive? He doesn't want to be alive. He's in such pain. It's horrible for him. He's had a good life. Sadly, this has happened. Nobody wants it to, but this
yeah.
is this
No,
is just
absolutely.
not right. But I know that part of the other thing that you experienced throughout, including stages where I think Graham wasn't given proper pain medication, was a real mixed bag of medical help and hindrance.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one pain episode lasted for 3 hours. And obviously, by then I was an absolute expert on Graham's pain. And I knew that this wasn't cancer pain. This was a full body spasm. You know, if you've ever had a calf cramp, I mean, I had one a couple of nights before. I was staying with Graham in the hospice and I woke up and it felt like someone was knifing me in my calf. And I jumped out and I was almost beside myself with pain. I mean, I didn't know what to do. And I was trying to, ram my leg against the wall to try and loosen the pain. So Graham was experiencing this in his whole body, and the nurses just refused to give him a muscle relaxant. And they kept saying Oromorph, Oromorph, which is liquid morphine. And I was going, this isn't cancer pain. This is, he needs a muscle relaxant.
Mm.
And in the end, at 4 o'clock in the morning, they finally got through to the director of the hospice and we were given permission to give him this injection that I've been begging for 3 hours. And during this time is when he begged to die and said you wouldn't treat an animal this way. And they gave him the injection, and literally within 2 minutes, he was fast asleep, and the pain
Yeah.
was removed completely. So when I witnessed this kind of thing, and also they put his call buzzer for pain relief in his paralyzed hand. So that's why he had a panic attack in the night when I wasn't there. And when I heard that, it was like, no way am I leaving my husband's side. You know, there were no showers for me to have. I couldn't get access to food after 6 p.m. I couldn't make my own tea, but I wasn't going to leave my husband in a place where he couldn't summon pain relief. And they never put his call buzzer in his functioning hand. So yeah, I witnessed this at a very prestigious hospice. So I was really shocked. And Graham had better care outside the hospice at home. I had more access to doctors there, on the end of the phone. He was put on a morphine driver. The carers that looked after him were absolutely amazing. Some of them, they sang, you know, a wonderful song that we sing at the Comrades Marathon, Shosha Loza to Graham. They cared about me. They provided me with emotional support. So Graham was much, much happier at home and in a lot less pain.
Yeah. I don't want to like brush over the other things in the book, but I also want people to go and read the book. So rather than perhaps going over everything, as I said in the intro, horrendously, you then lost your father. You've mentioned that briefly, and your sister as well within the next 17 months, which just must have been the most horrible thing. But the thing that I'm perhaps interested in was what made you think afterwards at some point, this is a story that I need to tell, because you'd written books about running before, hadn't you? But this is somewhat different to say the least.
Yeah, so my first book was Running Made Easy, which was all about, walk running, which at that time was popularized by Jeff Galloway in the United States, but hadn't really been taken off here. So it was my book was, or our book, because it was co-authored, was the Couch to 5K app, but in a book form rather than an app,
Yeah.
because it was written 20 years ago. And then my second book, Your Pace or Mine, detailed my journey from non-runner to the just before I got into the 100 Marathon Club. And I mean, the story was untold, unfinished because nobody knew whether I actually got into the 100 Marathon Club or not. So I always knew I wanted to write another running book. And I never expected it to be a book about grief and running, that's for sure. I really
Mm.
didn't. But I love meeting other runners. I'm a runner's world columnist now. So running stories cross my radar all the time. So I kind of thought it might be just a collection of more interesting people I met on my running adventures. So I didn't expect it to be this. But the reason I had to write this book, it was more I had to write it as opposed to wanted to write it, was because I spent so much time researching how to live with a terminal illness, how to, be as healthy as you possibly can through a cancer journey, how to deal with grief and bereavement. And I didn't want all of that knowledge to go to waste. I probably read a meter high pile of books. And Graham, once despairingly said, how many more books are you going to buy? And I said to him, my love, you're expecting me to lead you in this journey, and I don't know how to do that. Like I need someone to show me the way. So the book is, I call it a survival manual because it just summarizes. At the back, I've got an epilogue. And so people will read my story and that, you learn lessons just by reading stories. But
Mm.
if anyone goes through anything similar, like losing their running mojo, grief or bereavement, living with a cancer diagnosis, they can go to the back of the book, and all the most important information is summarized there in very handy bullet points, so they can actually quickly access the resources they need. The books that I found particularly useful, the websites I found useful, the organizations, and the strategies, tips, and techniques and things I used to stay positive throughout the 4 years that Graham was ill. So I wanted to celebrate Graham's life as well, and I wanted to celebrate my father. My mother's celebrated her life in there as well, and my
Mm.
sister's life. So it is a tribute to them, but it's also a tribute to running, because my relationship with running was completely redefined through all these experiences. 1 minute I was in 2015, I ran 28 marathons. So that meant I was running a marathon virtually every second weekend. And then I got to my 100th, and after that, in the next 2 years, I ran another 8 marathons. And then all of a sudden, I didn't run a marathon for 7 years. So I lost my running mojo for marathons. And then sometimes I just lost my running mojo completely when my back went into spasm. So it was actually really interesting to me how to get your running mojo back, because I hadn't read a book about that. So to actually have to go back to running a mile, like setting myself the challenge of running a mile. And, I was a kind of runner where if I didn't do 5K, it wasn't worth going out. That was kind of my minimum. And now I quite happily go out for a 3K or a 4K. I don't have to obsessively round up to 5K. And I run by feel. I run with what feels good in my body. And so that acceptance of I'm a different runner now than I was in 2015 was important. And for me to share that with people, because I think there's a lot of shame among very keen runners if they fall out of love with running and
Mm.
they feel they've lost something, and they have, but they don't really talk about it because, it just feels embarrassing. And I just want people to know they're not alone. And that's a lot in the book as well, is that there's certain topics that I've discussed in my book, like the loss of friendships due to having a terminal diagnosis. I didn't want to write that chapter, but I felt I would
Yeah.
be just, I wouldn't be honest, I wouldn't be authentic if I didn't actually address that chapter. It was the most hard, the hardest one I had to write. I rewrote it 7 or 8 times. But I wanted people to know they're not alone in other people not knowing how to deal with their illness, or other people not knowing how to deal, in my case, with my grief. So I hope the book's very reassuring to people, and I hope it's inspiring to people that,
Mm.
now back as a runner, like I don't want to do a marathon every second weekend. I've got other goals that I might want to achieve. I want to maybe try and do a half Ironman one day. I want to maybe run the Camino. I just got different goals. I want to run 100 park runs. I want to do 100 half marathons. And all these goals are valid. Like your goals don't have to be extraordinary, groundbreaking goals, but it's important to have goals. They pull you into the future. And I just want to remind people of the joy of running, because I really rediscovered that when I ran that marathon last year, bumping into all my old 100 Marathon Club friends, a lot of whom got to 100 marathons more or less at the same time I did, and now have done 4, 5, 6, 7, over 1,000 marathons. But it was so exciting to see them, and they just welcomed me back with open arms. The hugs, the stories, introducing me to other runners. I mean, one woman donated a kidney to a stranger or a friend. I can't remember if it was a stranger or a friend, but it wasn't a family member. And I
Yeah.
just was introduced to this amazing woman. I was just thinking, I've never met someone like you before. So it just reminded me of how much connection there is among runners, and the opportunity to get to know strangers, and just recognizing our common humanity. So yeah, I got really really excited about running again, and I kind of wanted to share that with people.
Mm. For anyone else who has sort of lost their running mojo for whatever reason, what was the thing that got you back going again? Was it that aim of running the marathon for Graham, or was it just that I'm going to go and do a couple of steps and see if this launches me back to where I was before?
Well, I did have a very loud voice quite early in Graham's illness that said running will be your salvation. And this is kind of a common thing among people. I didn't really realize it. I need to do more research into it. But people do have these almost auditory hallucinations of voices that they know is not it's not your own voice. Um, and it's just a strange thing. But it feels like it's someone standing next to you in a very loud way, proclaiming something to you. So I knew that running would help me with stress relief. I knew running would help me heal. I knew it would give me time to process Graham's death and all the other bereavements as well. So I always knew I was going to come back to running. It was greatly inspiring wanting to do it in Graham's honor, I must say, because I did my first Comrades in honor of my mother who was killed while out running. And that why definitely propelled me forward. I'm not quite sure I would have got to that finish line without a very powerful why. But generally, I just knew how good running was for me, that it was an integral part of my identity and that I needed to get it back. And I think it was just completely rescaling my expectations of myself and just going, you're not the runner you used to be. You have to accept that. It was I really struggled to accept that. And once I accepted it, it just changed everything. So, my first goal was to run a mile. And when I came back from that mile, I saw our wind farm out in the channel, and there was a turbine, and it had a rainbow ending on the turbine. So it looked like a rainbow powered turbine. And I've always loved rainbows, and was just like, oh my God, that is the most magical sight that I would not have seen if I wasn't a runner, because I wouldn't have been out here looking at this. And then within 2 weeks, I did a park run. And then quite shortly after that, I did my first half marathon again in the New Forest. And just being among these ancient trees, I was thinking, these trees have been here since the Norman conquest. And they've weathered all these storms, and they've weathered Graham's death and my father's death and my sister's death, and probably they will weather my death as well. It was very, very inspiring being out there, and being in nature again was just so healing as well. But what I did learn, this was a very big lesson as well, is the importance of warm-ups. Honestly, I thought, what a waste of time. You just get out and run, like run before you change your mind and go back inside. And I learned to warm up my body with 5 minutes of walking. And now I will not run a single step, except maybe for a bus, without my 5 minute warm up. And that has changed my attitude, because honestly, your body feels so different after a 5 minute walking warm up. I mean, you're supposed to do dynamic stretches, but I can't really be bothered to get all complicated about it. I just go for a brisk walk. And then to just ease into running that way has been an absolute game changer for me. And then I don't have these unrealistic expectations. It's just like run. Lorna Kiplagat once said, run till you feel tired and walk till you feel bored. And I'm just much gentler with myself now. There's no shoulds. You should be able to do this. You should round it up to 5K. You should, always do a long run every single time. And even in my marathon training, I'm just, honestly, I do my best. And if I don't have time to do that run, then I just didn't really have the time. Or if I just didn't feel well enough to do a run, then I just respect my body. So I've just got a different attitude to running now, and I just want to enjoy it. Before it was very much about proving myself to myself, because I was so unathletic. I mean, I've come last in 25 marathons. I've always been slow ever since I was a child. So to become a marathon runner was the least likely. I think if you had a yearbook, you would have said, person least likely to succeed at running would have been Lisa Jackson. I'm sure anyone I went to school with at primary school and high school would have told you that. So initially it was all about proving to myself that I could prove myself wrong and then prove other people wrong. But I don't have anything to prove now. I just don't feel that I have. And I'd rather spend the rest of my time just really enjoying running. And when I'm not enjoying it anymore, stop. Like just stop and have a walk, or stop and go home. I just
Yeah.
don't feel I have to push through the pain barrier anymore. I've done it 109 times. No, 111 times if you count the ultras. So I don't have to prove anything to myself. I know my mental strength now. And I also know, I could get through that 111 marathons and ultras, but I've also got through 3 bereavements in quick succession. And I just feel, I do feel I've got a bulletproof mindset now. I have such renewed respect for myself, but it's not just me. I mean, anyone is put in these situations. It's sink or swim. And I didn't have a choice. I had to survive these things because people were depending on me to be the strong one, to research their medical options, to hold them and stop them from falling over when they could barely walk anymore. So I didn't have a choice, and I just got on with it. And I mean, so many people do so much more than I ever did. But I just want to, remind people that running does give you superpowers. It really does.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to very gently push back on that in terms of the choice. I know what you mean, but having read the book, and look, it's your story, not mine. But I think you and Graham, you did have a choice at the start. You speak in the book about even going as far as contemplating doing like a suicide pact or something like that. But you did make that choice to go out and have that positive mindset and to do whatever you could do during that period. So the choice was the choice of how you react was there, and I kind of think it's a choice that's maybe, and I might be going too far here, forged in what you've done through running as well as your love for each other as well. So, yeah, that's my slight pushback, if it makes sense.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, we did. I couldn't imagine living without Graham. So, and I was terrified of him dying in pain because I'd actually seen a 93-year-old neighbor of ours that we were very, very fond of admitted to hospital after a stroke. And she was dehydrated and starved to death after over a period of 3 weeks. We went on holiday to South Africa for 2 weeks, and when we came back, she was still alive and she still hadn't eaten or drunk anything. I'm not sure how the hydration part of that worked because I did think you would die after 3 days, but seeing someone tortured to death like that made me realize at that point that I would become an end of life campaigner one day. But I thought I'd do it when I was retired, not then. So I was terrified of the way Graham was going to die. And I couldn't imagine my life without him because, as I said, I was an adult, my entire adult life, he'd been part of my life. But I must tell you that we tried the fear option. I mean, we lived it. I submitted to the fear. And I woke up in the
Yeah.
night screaming and I kept saying, oh my God, I'm going to die alone. My old age, who's going to come to medical appointments with me? Who's going to look after me in my old age? It was absolutely horrendous. And I'm not a kind of person who lives in fear, but that time it was awful. And I just thought I'm in such torment that we might as well end our lives now, because I can't live like this, and I can't. I'm sure Graham's even in worse torment because he's living with a physical illness as well. But I do believe happiness is a choice, and I am very lucky. I will say one thing: I am not prone to depression. My sister had bipolar disorder, and I think my mother did as well. And I'm not, I was spared that. I have, very exuberant moods of happiness, and I feel sorrow and other people's pain and my own pain very intensely, but I do not have bipolar disorder. So I've never experienced, full-blown depression. Yeah, I've had low days and they might have gone on for 3 days, but I know I really cannot ever say I was depressed. But I monitor my mental health very carefully, and I always have. When I feel my mental health sinking, I do something to change it. And I've learned that through hypnotherapy, actually. I think I understood the concept that a lot of people just think I wake up in a bad mood and then I just submit to it. And today's going to be a bad day, and you just carry on having a bad day. Whereas when I wake up and I go, ooh, I'm not my normal bouncy self today. What's up? And I check in with myself and I go, why am I feeling like this? Is there anything I can do about it? And that's actually something I learned during Graham's illness, was there was always something we could do. Like if I walked in and he was sitting there in front of his computer and he just had tears like streaming down his face, like I'd go, my love, are you okay? And he said, no, I'm thinking dark thoughts. And I go, okay, do you want a waterfall? And waterfall was just allowing ourselves to fully experience those emotions, the fear, the anger, the frustration, the despair, or whatever, and cry about it. And if we wanted to, howl about it, we could, and just fully experience it and just let it flow through our bodies. We did it together. And then just feel that absolute release. So then we do that. And then I'd say, okay, now we make a cup of tea. And now we make that phone call. Like you're worried about something, let me go and phone the nurse and ask her opinion on this. So I feel there's always something you can do. And I do that now even to steer my thoughts. I sometimes do still think, oh my God, you're going to die alone. Like there is going to be no one. If your call buzzer is placed in your paralyzed hand, there is going to be no one at your bedside saying, can you move it to her other hand, please? Or why haven't you given her radiotherapy because she's got a tumor on her rib and she's in indescribable pain? I do have thoughts like that. And then it's just like, well, are these helping me? Is this going to ruin my day and drag me down? And of course, the answer is yes. And then I just decide I'm going to think about something else, or I'm going to do something that makes me happy. I'm going to go outside and swim in the ocean, even if it's 5-degree water, or I'm going to call my friend whose house I'm at the moment, and I'm going to talk it through with her. So I actually really believe that we can steer our thoughts into different directions and take control. And it becomes a habit. So like once you start doing it, you get better at it. You get a muscle that can kind of, just like we are physical muscles, a mental muscle that can stop you from going down the pity party route. Um,
Yeah.
and I just don't want to be a victim. I don't want people to feel sorry for me, because I've also reframed this and said, I was with someone who was the love of my life and and I was the love of his, and I was
Mm.
deeply loved for 35 years. How many people have that privilege? So I am one of the luckiest women alive rather than one of the unluckiest. And generally that has really consoled me a lot. And my father actually said to me, let's celebrate the time we did have with your mother rather than the years we won't. And my dad was a very unemotional person on the surface. And for him to have said that so early after my mother's death, it changed my whole view of the loss of my mother, which was the biggest shock I'd ever experienced in my life. And that happened in 2007. And I'd never had anything like that happen to me before. My grandparents died at healthy old ages and things like that. So to have someone, die at 68, the most vibrant, determined woman. I mean, she was training for a marathon, etc. She'd gone jumping and whitewater rafting and all kinds of things that I would not do after the age of 60, was such a shock. So yeah, I think, if people really knew that they had the choice to be happy and you work
Mm.
at it, you actually, it's not something that just happens to you. You actually consciously take those decisions. It's a very empowering thing to know, and it really does work. But obviously, if you have, clinical depression and it's a chemical imbalance, that's a completely different um,
Yeah.
story.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. No, I think it's that's a really empowering notion and a way to look at things, for sure. I want to talk a little bit about again your own running because you sort of talked it down a bit, but you said 111 marathons. You've done Comrades twice. That is not an easy race to do. That's something I wouldn't even imagine doing. But you also mentioned that in a lot of those marathons you were towards the back or at the back. Is it too far to say that you almost wear that back of the pack, dead last sometimes as a bit of a badge of pride as well because you're like I can still do this. However I have to do it is how I do it, and that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't really have a choice. I've sometimes been asked, like, how do you run slowly? Like a magazine article once, like, can you give our readers how to run slowly? It's like, um, there's no technique to it. It's just, be bored Lisa Jackson and you'll find out very soon enough you can't run fast. I mean, obviously I can run faster because to run Comrades, I had to
Yeah.
train a lot and I slashed, oh, I forget now. I mean, 45 minutes off my average marathon time. But the way I had to train, I didn't enjoy it. I don't like doing speed training. I just don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy doing countless lunges and squats. So
Mm.
it kind of took a lot of joy out of my running to have to get faster. And I'm not about speed at all. I'm about connection and chatting. So, that's why I want to run. Like when people say to me, you'd run faster if you stop chatting, I'd go, well, if I stop chatting, I wouldn't run at all because there's no point to it. I don't know why I would want to do that.
Yeah.
Um, so, being slow, I mean, obviously, if I was running with you, which I wouldn't be because I'm sure you're much faster than me, but if we got to the finish line and I had a chance of being last, I would ask you to just take one, go a tiny bit ahead of me so I could have the wooden spoon and have the honor of being last. Because I think it's a bit of pride. And I think
Yeah.
it's most amuses me is meeting people who never run marathons at all. And when I tell them I've come last in 25, they go, oh, well, never mind, at least you finished. I'm thinking, why are you feeling sorry for me? Like
Yeah.
save your sorrow for yourself because you'll never know the thrill of finishing a marathon ever. And also
Mm.
you'll never know the thrill of finishing last because you get made such a fuss of at lots of races. Have all the team have assembled and they all give you this honor guard and they're all clapping for you.
Yeah.
And you get double goodie bags often. And there's absolutely, I don't feel like iota of shame over it. I'm just so proud because I really am amazed that I've even done one marathon, let alone, 109, and also that I did Comrades. So, yeah, I mean, goodness, I really hope I can be like some of the people I've interviewed, like my friend Colette O'Hagan, who's 74 and did her 1000th marathon. And in the kind of 2 or 3 months after that, she already done another 20. I'd love to be a woman like her. She is a naturally talented runner. She just is. She's got the figure of a runner. She's got this, but her mindset, her stamina. I think she's really talented. And I'm not talented. I'm deeply untalented at it. And that's why I'm so proud of myself because I think nobody likes doing things they're not good at. And I'm not good at running. I'm just not. But then again, I've achieved a lot more than a lot of people who are good at running. So
Mm.
that's why I'm doubly proud. And actually, to be honest, I'll be very honest with you, Craig. I really don't care what people think of me. I just actually don't. I've got to
Yeah.
that age. I mean, I have, hit the watershed of going over 50 and over 55. And every woman that I know, I haven't talked to many men about this, but they just say the greatest thing about getting older is you just stop caring so much. So, whether people admire me for coming last for 25 times or pity me or feel really, really sorry for me or feel it's really embarrassing. I've had a few comments online sometimes saying, perhaps if you trained, you'd be a better runner. And it's like, excuse me, do you know what it takes for me, to run at all? Because every step is hard. I think that's what people don't really understand, whether I'm running 1K or I'm running 91K, which is Comrades. I always found running challenging. I honestly can't. There's very, very few occasions in my life where I can actually say, my goodness, it just feels like my head is floating above my body. My body is a well-oiled machine. It's happened a few times, but it's absolutely, if that happens once a year, that's a miracle. So the fact that I'm challenging, every step's a challenge for me. I'm super proud of myself. And I mean, I go and look at myself in the mirror. I check out my sweat beads. I sniff my t-shirts. I tell myself, I talk out loud. Graham used to say it before, I'm proud of you. I tell myself now, look in the mirror, make sure I go there and tell myself how proud I am of myself. But now I don't have to go to extremes anymore. I do feel, I mean, maybe half Ironman will be an extreme, but I don't feel that I've got anything to prove to anybody. If I feel like doing half Ironman, because I really would love the word Ironman. Because Graham and I said we don't have tattoos, but we did say if we ever, because initially I did want to do a whole Ironman, and we did say if we ever did it, we'd get the tattoo, and that
Yeah.
I think is a little bit too ambitious for me now. I mean, I never say never, but it's just I don't really want to take up a full time because the training is actually almost for me and my age it would be a full-time job. It would I think young people it's 20 hours a week. I think for people my age it's 40 hours a week. And I'm not sure that I just want to be in a pool or on a bike or on the road, permanently from dawn till dusk all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, what a great aim to have, though. I think the Ironman as well, and that would be a really well-earned tattoo for sure. I mean, there's two things that strike me. I mean, personally, I admire anyone whether they finish from anywhere from first to last. I just think people getting out there and doing it is awesome, and that's the end of the story, really. But I'm always amazed by people who feel the need to gatekeep or get involved or have a view on somebody else. I saw someone weighing on the other day about if you don't do a sub 3 hour marathon, you're not a runner. Well, that rules out 90% of runners in the world. And it's just what? It's absolute madness.
Oh, I absolutely agree with you. I think I've written a column about this, these running judges who sit in judgment on other people. I mean, I just think, if those people had been involved in my life and they would have excluded me from running. I mean, the
Mm,
interesting thing is, I might be one of the worst runners you're ever going to interview, worst as in quote marks. I don't regard myself as a bad runner or anything, but I'm just saying.
yeah,
Um, but yet, what I've written has inspired people who have gone on to do 100 milers and have gone on from day one runner, novice runner, to doing an ultra marathon in the same year. I've given people permission to run. And so, would it have been a great idea to exclude someone like me, who you
yeah.
think, is a jogger and a joke? Exclude me at your peril because actually, I have not gatekept. I've said, look at the joy I've had, and I'm not good at it. And people often say that. They say, if Lisa Jackson can do it, I can. And I say, you're absolutely damn right. Like, I am an example of someone who's not talented. I say, I'm a triumph of tenacity over a lack of talent. And if I can do it, you can do it. And if you have to want to, I mean, when people say, I could never run a marathon, I said, well, you could. I mean, anyone could. Right? If there was a tiger chasing you, trust me, you could run a marathon. But the fact is, you've
Yeah.
got to want to. And if you don't want to, I totally get it. I absolutely listen. I mean, I do question my life choices like at the points in every single race that I ever do. And it doesn't even have to be a marathon, it can be a 5K in park run. I think, oh, are we nearly
The,
there yet?
the hardest race is 5K park run.
Oh no, I'm telling well, you
Horrible.
see, oh well, I don't race it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I
But
shouldn't say race. I'll get in all kinds of trouble, won't
no,
I?
you will get into trouble. It's inventing it or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's always a challenge. And I just think those people honestly need to stay in their lane because I always go out of my way as well to say how much I admire faster runners because I
Mm.
know that okay, some people are just naturally talented, but most of the time they put in a heck of a lot of work. Okay, they are looking at their watch all the time. They're not having a fun time. They're not chatting like I am. They're not eating cartons full of snacks at the back. I take takeaways. I take the water cups and I stuff them with snacks and then I jaunt along.
Yeah.
So they're having a completely different experience. And I fully respect that. I think that is absolutely amazing. And that's your goal and that's what you want. But other people have different goals. And to me, if I've made a friend in a race, that's much more important to me than what time I did. And actually, one of my worst marathons ever was my personal best in London. It was 4 hours
Yeah.
38. I ran with headphones in. I didn't speak to another soul. I was screaming and cursing at runners silently in my head, obviously, because I would never do it out loud. But you're in my way. What the hell are you doing? Get out of our way. You're slowing me down. Honestly, it was a play. I was thinking I've turned into a monster.
Yeah.
And yeah, I got my PB, but there is nothing else to say about that race. Nothing. I
Mm.
can't tell you anything except my earphone fell out at one point along it. Uneventful. I could have ran it on a treadmill. I wasted the whole London experience. I actually felt guilty. I thought, someone else could have used this place and had a full race experience. And instead, I sat here chasing a time and I never met anyone. I never talked to anyone. Didn't smile at the marshals. There's a whole experience that I missed out on. So
Yeah.
that's the way I want to run marathons. And it's other people are very welcome to run, the way they wish. I mean, I've heard from really good runners like Liz Yelling saying they have lots of fun at the front. They actually chat and things like that. I didn't know that, but they
Yeah.
do. So there's camaraderie at the front and there's camaraderie at the back. But I just think, there's room for all of us. And actually, all the fast people. I mean, how many people can run sub 3? Very small. So we're going to take the London Marathon, which is this big carnival event of 50,000, 56,000 people, whatever it is now, and we're going
Mm.
to narrow it down to 1,000 people. I mean, who would come out on the streets of London to watch that? It's
No.
not very entertaining. I mean, the best entertainment, of course, is the people who run in fancy dress like myself.
Yeah.
And I bring joy, wherever I go with my flappy flamingo hat. I'm not wearing it today, but the wings move and I wave at all the kids that I go by. And the people dressed up as Big Ben and the rhinos. And, that's exciting for people to watch. So I think, there's room for all of us. There really is. And the people we wouldn't get the television coverage if it was only us slow people running. Like they need those beautiful elite athletes. I've gone to watch the Olympic marathon several times. And oh goodness, to see people, just poetry in motion, it's so inspiring. It's just beautiful. In fact, I shouted so loudly that one of the runners nearly fell over. I was just so enthusiastic and so full of awe. And he just like turned and oh my God, and he started stumbling. It was terrible. I was thinking, if I created a pile up in an Olympic marathon, I kind of
Yeah.
could have made running history for different reasons. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's all so true. And running is such an amazing sport in those big marquee events. Like I've run the Great North Run. I didn't enjoy it that much. That's another story. But Mo Farah ran it as run that day. What sort of chance do you have to run in a race with someone like Mo Farah? And I'm never going to get on step on a football pitch. There's just no way it's ever going to happen
Mhm.
with Lionel Messi, or I'm not going to play cricket with Joe Root or anything. It's just not going to happen. But in this sport, okay, we don't necessarily see them and chat with them, but we're there competing in the same event as them, and that's amazing to be able to do that. To have that panoply of athletes all competing at their own level.
Absolutely. And you don't have to be scouted. I mean, there have been people who've done very well in the London Marathon who've just simply
Yeah,
lined up there and
yeah,
then ended up doing really, really well. And it's not because they've been chosen or invited or sponsored or anything. They just turned up and ran that day. So you're absolutely right. I remember that being something that really struck me when I did my first marathon. I was thinking, I am here and I'm in the same event as these legends of
yeah.
running, and it just excited me beyond belief. It's such an inclusionary sport, for those reasons. Yeah.
Mm. And so I think you said earlier that the Brighton Marathon is on your list again this year.
Yeah.
What's the plan with the running for you at the moment?
Oh, Craig, you're asking me at the wrong time because my my training was going absolutely brilliantly. Every single training run, I've got it on my fridge and I highlighted it off. And I was so proud of myself. I didn't miss a single one. And I was just, oh, over the moon. And then I got sick. And I was ill for 2 weeks, and I really don't believe in running when you're ill because I just feel your body is already under immense strain, and your heart and things like that. And I've had a few heart problems, and I just didn't want to risk it. So then I couldn't run. That was for 2 weeks, and then I still haven't really fully recovered from that because of my book launch. I've been working like something like 6:30 in the morning till 11 at night, 7 days a week. It's just been absolutely really, I mean, it's most exciting things because I had a private publicist this time. So she got me double the amount of publicity that I would have had previously. So, what I could do for myself, which is substantial because I know so many people, she doubled that. So the workload has been enormous. And I just haven't felt I didn't have the time, and I also had a hip niggle that I was worried about, and I haven't had time to do my rehab exercises. So in the end, I was really thinking of ducking out of Brighton because I did the Brighton half, but my knee got injured in that, and I just thought, oh no, I did it 3 minutes faster than last year, so I'm actually improving weirdly, despite not really trying to improve, it's just happening. And then I went to see my physio this week, and she said to me, Lisa, you haven't torn a cartilage or meniscus or anything, but I think it's just you've been sitting down for such a long period of time without running, like 12 hours or 14,
Right.
whatever it is a day of sitting down, your whole body has seized up. So she gave me a lot of encouragement, and she said, don't run for the next 2 weeks, do walking, swimming, yoga, Pilates, whatever. And then the thing is with Brighton, they're trying to be a lot more inclusive since they've been taken over by the London Marathon. So they actually let you finish no matter what. So I actually just thought, you know what? If worst comes to the worst, I'll just turn up and walk the whole thing. I mean,
Yeah.
I won't walk every single step because I am still capable of running. But so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep myself now ticking over, see what happens after 2 weeks. Because she said if it doesn't improve after 2 weeks, I'm going to seriously suggest you don't do Brighton. But again, I don't know if that meant running Brighton or completing Brighton.
Yeah.
But it's such a lovely event. I mean, I love it. I was there for the first one, and I just said this is a world-class event, and it still is. And there's so many people I know doing it. And even if I go and I do half of it, or a quarter of it, and just have some fun, and then go and
Mm.
sit in a bar and feel sorry for everyone going by, or cheer for everyone going by, or whatever. So that's my plan for that. But I have actually got a backup marathon later in the year. I'm going to do the Loch Ness Marathon because a lot of
Oh,
people at my gym are
fantastic.
doing it. I've done it before, and actually, it's very significant. Again, this will be a very Graham themed marathon because Loch Ness is where Graham and I went on our final holiday together. And we just loved it so much from when we did the marathon that's why we returned there. So I'm going to stay in a hotel with my really close friend who was an absolute rock throughout Graham's illness. And there's this beautiful boutique hotel that we're going to go and stay in for a couple of nights. And then I'm going to be with my running club teammates, and they know how to party from judging by the photos I've seen before. So I've never really gone on a marathon safari like that with a group before. I usually just, traveled on my own or on press trips and things like that. So to actually have a team to go out with together, and then just because I know that the scenery is just so beautiful there, it's actually it's painfully beautiful. I remember staring out over Loch Ness with Graham, and it was a windless day, and I wanted to just stay there forever. I've never seen such a beautiful sight with the mountains reflected in the water. And then also just the mystery of the fact there might be a Loch Ness monster lurking underneath all that tranquility. It's just a beautiful part of the world. And Scottish people are so amazing as well. I'm quarter Scottish. So I always feel like it's a little bit like going home. And the scenery, actually, some of the mountains are very much like the ones in Cape Town. So
Yeah.
it's a very, very special part of the world. Yeah. So I've got my backup marathon. So, because I'm kind of thinking I'd like to do a marathon a year because that's how I started out. So I only used to do one a year anyway. So a marathon a year. And it's actually very good to have a spring marathon, I must say, because that got me out on days, in the dark and the rain and the cold that I would never have contemplated running on if I was given a choice. But having a goal of a spring marathon is very motivating. So I think I must continue that tradition, but then not be hard on myself. If Brighton doesn't happen, Brighton doesn't happen, and I've got another backup, later in the year.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And it's so hard, isn't it, when you sort of get illness and injury and so on. I'm training for Shakespeare Marathon at the moment and have
Oh,
the,
wow.
the dreaded plantar fasciitis, which is
Oh,
it had been okay, but I went on a 16 miler training run at the weekend and it was like well, put it this way, it wasn't okay. So
yeah,
we should have to see how that goes. I've seen my physio, but it's so hard, and I think the idea of you know, taking a step back for it and thinking there's different ways of doing this, having your A and your B goal. My idea was to try and get a sub 4 time on it, and
wow.
that might still be my idea. But equally, if it plays up, I can walk run it, I can get round, I can enjoy the scenery. It's supposed to be nice there. So I think, having that idea that in because the thing is, at the end of the day, unless you are someone like Mo Farah or Elliot Kipchoge or whatever, nobody's going to remember down the line. You will, but no one's really going to care. But you will remember those feelings that you had at the race. So I think just being miserable about it because you haven't got the time you've got is pretty self-defeating, isn't it?
Do you know, I used to go to my running club after party from the London Marathon. It used to be on the same day as the marathon, and you could wear any medals to the party that you'd got that year. And I always
Yeah.
had the most. I used to walk in like Mr. T from the A team, clanging away. And people say, "Can I take a photo of you? Can I take a photo of you?" I said, "Yeah, of course you can." You know, I had five or something, or six or seven.
Yeah.
But then I'd watch them all crying into their beers, and because they hadn't got most of them, because they hadn't got the times they wanted. And I just thought, this is ridiculous. Like, you've
Mm.
got a place in one of the best, or if not the best marathon in the world. There's, I don't know, in those days, maybe not as many as there are now, but still like 50 people wanted that place. And you're
Yeah.
sitting here disappointed, crying into your beer. And I just think it's absolutely ridiculous. I honestly do. And we had a wonderfully inspiring coach, and he said you need three plans. You need plan A, B, and C. A is the absolute best time. B is a kind of compromise time, and C is just finishing. And
Yeah.
if you finish, that is an achievement, and it's an amazing thing to celebrate. So yeah, I don't have any sympathy for people like that, to be quite honest. Like, I just move on to the next person because I can't feel sorry for them. I can't genuinely work up the enthusiasm to feel sorry for them because they are
Mm.
so lucky. And that's what I've realized, how lucky we are to run at all. When you're injured, you suddenly realize, when I couldn't run at all, it was taken away from me. So it felt like such a bereavement. That was another bereavement, a real loss, because it's
Yeah.
such a coping strategy. It's such a fun thing to do. And we're so lucky. And there's people who will never run because they, have got congenital deformities and things like that.
Mm.
And I really feel, we've just got to celebrate whatever we can do. And walk running, obviously, that was something I popularized, was walking is no shame. And for comrades, I mean, even the winners some years, Caroline, I forget her name now, and people were screaming at her, going, "You're in the lead, you're in the lead, for God's sake, don't walk." And she goes, "No, it's part of my plan." And she
Yeah.
won. And
Yeah.
so that's where I learned, the expression, which I've taught many people I've run with: walk with pride and purpose. So you don't walk with a hangdog expression or looking like you're window shopping. You move, you focus, and you push yourself, but it's relentless forward progress. And that takes a lot. And if you are injured, or you suddenly find yourself out on the road for an hour or two or three longer than you anticipated, that is extremely challenging. It
Mm.
really is. And a lot of fast runners, when they've been forced to run with slower people, just go, "Oh my God, I had no idea what you people go through." Like, that extra time on our feet is really challenging. So I think everyone deserves respect, right from the first runner right through to the last one. And it's also, you've got to remember, by finishing, you are thousands of places ahead of the people who never started or
Mm.
who dropped out. So there's so much pride to be had in just getting a medal.
Yeah.
Well, not
100%.
just
No.
getting a medal, and getting a medal. And why am I saying just? You see, that's a habit.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks,
Yeah.
"Oh, well, at least you finished." It's like, no, I finished. Massive, massive congratulations to me. I will be sleeping in my medal tonight.
Absolutely. And wearing 5 or 6 or 20 odd of them
Yeah.
to the end of year party. That must have been quite the year.
Well, it was funny because I really was the slowest runner, in that club. And someone there, when they heard my that I said I was going to do comrades, I mean, they just snorted. I mean, they just couldn't believe it. And that person, I'm so thankful to them, because when I thought of quitting
Yeah.
halfway through the comrades, I just thought, you know what? I'm not going to prove him right. I'm just not. They can pull me off this course, They can kick me off, they can boot me off at the cutoffs, but I'm not giving him the satisfaction of saying, I told you so. How dare you think you
Yeah.
could do it? And that really powered me through. And I just thought I'll show you. And I'll tell you that, yeah, okay, well, I wasn't in the end. I never got through every single cutoff. But, and I ended up finishing. So, people can be unintentionally inspiring.
Oh yeah, I've definitely heard that one before. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us today and for telling your story, the sad parts, the happy parts, and so on, and speaking so wonderfully about running. Just finally, can you maybe tell everybody where they can go and find Still Running After All These Tears?
Well, it's in all good bookshops, but it is also on Amazon. So, yeah, please do buy a copy and please review it because I love to read the comments. And I always put my email address in the back of my books. So you can always get in touch with me and tell me, what you gained from the book. Hopefully, it really will help you through some of the toughest times in your life.
Fantastic. Thank you again, as I say, for joining me today on the Running Tales podcast. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks so much for having me, Craig. It was lovely meeting you.
Thank you, everybody, for listening into my conversation tonight with Lisa Jackson. If you enjoyed it, please do that like and subscribe thing. Please go and check out Lisa's book, Still Running After All These Tears. I'll put a link in the show notes to that as well. It's a fantastic read, as I said, both heartbreaking and inspiring at the same time. So yeah, go and buy that and have a read of that as well. Give us that like and subscribe. Go and check out Running Tales and Substack. And most importantly, come and join us again next week for another episode of the Running Tales podcast.